The massive council chamber buzzed with hundreds of different alien voices. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered on the neutral station orbiting the dead star of Kepler 442. Today, the newest species to reach the stars would present themselves to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Hyun-woo walked slowly down the long aisle between the floating platforms. His simple black uniform stood out against the colorful robes and shimmering scales of the alien delegates. Behind him, two human guards in plain gray armor followed at a respectful distance. The humans looked small compared to the towering Velkari, warriors, or the floating gas creatures of the Nexari Federation. Council leader Quindar raised one of his 4 arms for silence. The Nexari's jellyfish-like body pulsed with soft blue light as he spoke through his translator device. The species, called humans, has requested membership in our great alliance. They claim to come in peace and offer their primitive technology for our consideration. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Supreme Commander Thexmore of the Velkari Empire stood up, his 8-foot frame covered in red ceremonial armor. Primitive, indeed, he growled, his voice like grinding stone. These soft pink creatures have barely learned to travel between stars. What could they possibly offer beings who have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years? More laughter filled the air. The delegates seemed to find the idea of human membership amusing. Only Ambassador Yeltron of the peaceful Corvani remained quiet, his large eyes studying the human delegation with interest. Hyun-woo reached the speaking platform at the center of the chamber. He placed both hands on the podium and looked around. At the assembled aliens, his face showed no fear or anger, only calm determination. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "We come before you not as supplicants, but as equals. Humanity offers its friendship and knowledge freely. We ask only for the same respect we show to all thinking beings." Thexmore laughed loudly. "Respect must be earned, little human. Your species has existed for what, 200,000 years? We Velkari have conquered star systems since before your ancestors learned to make fire. And yet," Hyun-woo replied quietly, "we are here, speaking as equals in this chamber." The Supreme Commander's eyes flashed with anger. But before he could respond, Quindar spoke again. "Tell us, human, what makes your species worthy of membership? What great achievements can you claim?" Hyun-woo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made even the loudest delegates pay attention. "We have learned something that perhaps other species have forgotten. We have learned what it means to lose everything and still choose to keep fighting." "Pretty words," scoffed a delegate from the reptilian Zephyri collective. "But words are not achievements. Where are your mighty fleets, your conquered worlds, your technological marvels?" "Our fleets exist," Hyun-woo said simply, "as do our technologies. But we did not come here to threaten or boast. We came to offer partnership." Thexmore stood again, his massive form casting a shadow over the human. "Ambassador, partnership requires strength, weak one. Your pathetic species has, what, 50 worlds, 100 ships? We Velkari command 1,000 systems and fleets that darken the space between stars." "Numbers are not everything," Hyun-woo replied. "A single determined defender can hold a mountain pass against an army." "Philosophical nonsense," Quindar declared, his body flashing with irritated colors. "This council deals in reality, not poetry. Show us your strength or admit your weakness." Hyun-woo looked around the chamber one more time. Then he reached into his uniform and pulled out a small device. The chamber fell silent as he activated it. and a holographic display appeared above the podium. The image showed a human warship, sleek and angular, moving through space. But something was different about this vessel. It seemed to carry itself with a kind of dignity that the alien delegates had never seen in a ship before. "This is the HDF Remembrance," Hyun-woo said quietly. "It patrols the border of human space. The ship looks ordinary to you, I'm sure. But I want you to understand something important about human warships." He paused, and the image zoomed in to show the ship's hull. Along its sides were carved thousands of names, too small to read from this distance, but clearly visible as an endless list. "Every human warship carries the names of the dead," Hyun-woo continued. "Not just the military dead, but every human, life lost to war, to violence, to those who would take what others have built. Our ships are not just weapons, they are monuments. They are promises." The chamber was completely quiet now. Even Thexmore had stopped laughing. "Our warships are an unyielding force," Hyun-woo said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "Not because they are the strongest or the fastest, but because they carry the weight of human memory. Every crew member who serves aboard them knows that they fight not just for victory, but for the promise that no other world will suffer as Earth once suffered." "What happened to Earth?" Yeltron asked quietly. Speaking for the first time, Hyun-woo's face grew sad. "Earth was silenced once. We learned that lesson well. We learned that sometimes peace can only be maintained by those willing to fight for it. We learned that sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to be utterly ruthless with the guilty." He turned off the hologram and looked directly at Thexmore. "We offer you our friendship. We offer you our knowledge. We offer you our protection. But understand this, our warships are not mere tools of war. They are extensions of human will, forged in defiance and tempered by loss. Do not mistake our offer of peace for weakness." The Supreme Commander's expression had changed. The amusement was gone, replaced by something that might have been uncertainty. "You speak of loss," Quindar said slowly. "But every species has known loss. What makes humans different?" "Other species recover from loss," Hyun-woo replied. "Humans, remember it. We carry it with us. We let it make us stronger, and we swear by the memory of our dead that we will never let it happen again, to us or to anyone else under our protection." He stepped back from the podium. "The choice is yours, honored delegates. Accept our offer of partnership and gain allies who will never abandon you. Reject it and simply know that human space will remain closed to those who choose to be our enemies." Thexmore leaned forward. "And if we decide to take what you will not give freely?" Hyun-woo met his gaze without flinching. "Then you will learn why our warships are called an unyielding force. But I hope for all our sakes that such a lesson will not be necessary." With that, the human delegation turned and walked from the chamber, leaving behind a room full of aliens who suddenly found themselves unsure of what they had just witnessed. In the silence that followed, only Yeltran spoke. "I believe," he said quietly, "that we have just made a terrible mistake." 3 months had passed since the humans left the Galactic Council. Supreme Commander Thexmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion. Around his ship, 200 Velkari warships moved through hyperspace, like a pack of hungry wolves. "How much longer until we reach the human colony?" Thexmore asked his navigation officer. 2 hours, Supreme Commander," came the reply. "The world they call New Busan lies just ahead." Thexmore smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The humans had made a mistake leaving the council. They had shown weakness, and weakness invited attack. Intelligence reports suggested New Busan was a farming world with minimal defenses, an easy target to show these upstart humans their place in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Rath Ghul approached from the tactical station. His armor bore the scars of a dozen campaigns. "Supreme Commander, our scouts report only a handful of human ships in the system. Mostly civilian transports and a few patrol craft." "Perfect," Thexmore growled. "These humans will learn what happens when primitive species refuse the wisdom of their betters." On New Busan, Colony Administrator So Young watched. The warning displays in the command center. Red lights flashed across every screen as the long-range sensors detected the approaching Velkari fleet. She had been expecting this day ever since the delegation returned from the Galactic Council. "Activate Emergency Protocol 7, she ordered, calmly. Around her, the control room staff moved with practiced efficiency. They had drilled for this moment many times. Defense Coordinator Tae-min ran into the room, his face grim. "So Young, we're picking up massive hyperspace signatures. Looks like at least 200 ships." 200. So Young raised an eyebrow. "The Velkari are taking us seriously then." "This isn't a joke," Tae-min said. "We only have 12 patrol ships and maybe 30,000 civilians to evacuate." "The civilians will be fine," So Young replied, her fingers dancing over the control panels. "And we have more than 12 ships. Trust the plan, Tae-min." Across the colony, sirens began to wail. But instead of panic, the colonists moved with calm purpose. Veteran Dong Hyun led his neighborhood group toward the underground shelters. These weren't hastily built panic rooms. They were sophisticated bunkers that had been constructed with the colony's first buildings. "Remember," Dong Hyun called to the families around him, "stay calm and stay together. The shelters have everything we need for a month. This will all be over soon." A young mother carrying her baby looked worried. "What if the aliens break through? What if they find us?" Dong Hyun's weathered face showed a grim smile. "Ma'am, those aliens have no idea what they've just walked into. Trust me on that." The Velkari fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Busan system. Immediately, their sensors swept the area, cataloging every ship and station they could detect. "Report," Admiral Rath Ghul ordered. "Confirmed, sir. Minimal resistance. I count 8 human patrol craft, 4 cargo vessels, and what looks like a small space station. No major warships detected." Thexmore laughed. "Is this the great human fleet we were warned about? 8 patrol boats?" "Perhaps they fled when they detected our approach," suggested the tactical officer. "No matter," Thexmore declared. "Spread the fleet into attack formation. Begin orbital bombardment of the major cities. Show these humans the price of defying the Velkari Empire." The alien warships spread across the system like a net. Each vessel was massive, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. They moved toward New Busan with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. Hidden in the asteroid belt at the system's edge, Admiral In-Soo watched the enemy fleet deploy through the sensors of his command ship. The vessel appeared to be nothing more than a mining platform, its hull scarred and dirty from years of work. But behind the false panels and disguised armor, one of humanity's most advanced warships waited. "Enemy fleet is taking the bait," reported his communications officer. "They're spreading out just as we predicted," In-Soo nodded. The Velkari were following standard attack doctrine: surround the target and attack from multiple angles. It was effective against most species, but most species didn't plan their defenses the way humans did. "Signal all units," In-Soo ordered, quietly. "Phase 1 is complete. Prepare for Protocol Omega." Across the system, ships that the Velkari had dismissed as harmless began to change. Cargo vessels that had been drifting quietly near the outer planets suddenly came alive with hidden power signatures. Mining platforms revealed themselves to be heavily armed destroyers. What the aliens thought were automated freight haulers were actually human warships in disguise. On the surface of New Busan, the first Velkari bombardment began. Beam weapons lanced down from orbit, striking empty fields and abandoned buildings. The aliens had expected to see fires and explosions, fleeing civilians and desperate defense forces. Instead, they found ghost towns and carefully prepared decoys. "Where are they?" Rathgul muttered, studying the sensor displays. "Where are the humans?" His answer came in the form of weapons fire from behind. A ship that had appeared to be a simple freighter opened up with enough firepower to cripple a Velkari cruiser in the first volley. Then another civilian vessel revealed hidden missile launchers. Then another. "We're under attack," the tactical officer shouted. "Multiple contacts appearing throughout the fleet." Thexmore spun toward the displays, his eyes wide with shock. "How many ships?" "I don't know, sir. The sensors are showing. This can't be right. 500 contacts and climbing. What the Velkari had thought was a lightly defended agricultural world was actually the center of a carefully planned trap. Every civilian ship, every mining platform, every seemingly harmless structure in the system was actually a human warship in disguise. Admiral In-Su allowed himself a small smile as his command ship dropped its mining platform disguise. The massive dreadnought hidden strength emerged from its camouflage like a predator shedding its skin. "All units, this is Admiral In-Su," he broadcast on all human frequencies. "The enemy has revealed their intentions. They chose to fire on civilian targets. Protocol Omega is now in effect." Throughout the system, human ships that had been pretending to be helpless civilians transformed into instruments of war. The trap had been 3 months in the making, ever since the first reports of Velkari fleet movements reached human intelligence. And now, Supreme Commander Thexmore found his easy conquest had become a nightmare. His 200 ships were surrounded by a human fleet that outnumbered them more than 2 to 1. Worse, they were scattered across the system, unable to support each other effectively. "How is this possible?" Thexmore demanded. "Our intelligence said this was a farming colony." Admiral Rathgul was frantically trying to reorganize their scattered forces. "Sir, recommend immediate withdrawal. We've walked into a prepared ambush, but..." Thexmore's pride would not allow retreat. He had boasted to the entire Galactic Council about Velkari superiority. He could not return in defeat to creatures he had called weak and primitive. "Never," he snarled. "Signal all ships. Attack formation. We will show these humans what Velkari warriors can do." In the depths of space, Admiral In-Su watched the enemy ships begin to regroup. He had hoped the aliens would see reason and withdraw. But pride, he knew, could make even intelligent beings do stupid things. "So be it," he said quietly. "All ships, weapons free. Remember the promise we made to those who would threaten human worlds." The Battle of New Busan was about to begin in earnest, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone ignored a human warning. The moment the first Velkari beam weapons struck the surface of New Busan, something changed in human space. It wasn't visible to sensors or detectable by alien technology, but every human in the system felt it. A cold, hard certainty that settled into their hearts like ice. Admiral In-Su stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays show Velkari weapons fire hitting empty buildings and abandoned settlements. The aliens had made their choice. They had fired on civilian targets without warning, without mercy, without even bothering to check if anyone was still down there. "Signal all fleet elements," Insu said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Protocol Omega. The enemy has chosen their path." The message went out on encrypted human channels, spreading from ship to ship throughout the system. 3 simple words that changed everything. 3 words that meant the humans were no longer pretending to be anything other than what they truly were. Captain Su Jin felt the message arrive on her ship, the vessel that had been masquerading as a simple cargo freighter for the past month. She had grown tired of the deception, tired of watching her crew pretend to be helpless merchants while Velkari scouts studied them with contempt. "You heard the Admiral?" she announced to her bridge crew. "Drop all pretenses, show them the iron resolve." Her ship began to transform. What had appeared to be cargo containers fell away, revealing hidden weapon batteries. The dull gray hull shed its disguise, exposing the sleek armor plating underneath. Engines that had been running at quarter power suddenly flared to full strength. Around the system, the same transformation was happening to hundreds of other ships. Mining platforms revealed themselves to be heavily armed battle stations. Cargo haulers exposed hidden missile launchers. Transport vessels dropped their civilian markings and showed their true colors as human destroyers and cruisers. Lieutenant Commander Wu Bin watched from his fighter bay as the massive hangar doors opened for the first time in months. His squadron had been hiding inside what appeared to be an asteroid mining facility. Now, 60 human fighters prepared to launch from a base the Velkari had completely ignored. "All right, people," Wu Bin announced to his pilots. "Time to remind these aliens why they should have listened to our ambassador." The fighters launched in perfect formation, their sleek shapes cutting through space toward the scattered Velkari fleet. Behind them, the mining facility revealed its true nature as a heavily fortified battle station, its weapons systems coming online with deadly purpose. Admiral Rathgul stared at his tactical display in growing horror. What had been 8 human patrol craft and a handful of civilian vessels had become a fleet of over 500 warships. Worse, they were appearing all around his scattered forces, emerging from hiding places that had been invisible until now. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Where did they all come from?" His sensor officer looked pale. "Sir, I think they were here all along. Every ship we identified as civilian was actually military. The entire system is one massive trap." Supreme Commander Thexmore felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare, genuine fear. His forces were spread across the system in attack formation, but now they found themselves surrounded by enemies that had appeared from nowhere. Enemies that had been watching them, studying them, waiting for them to make the first move. "Signal the fleet," Thexmore ordered. "Reform defensive positions. Concentrate our firepower." But the humans had no intention of giving them time to regroup. The moment Protocol Omega went into effect, every human ship in the system went on the attack simultaneously. Captain Su Jin's iron resolve opened fire on the nearest Velkari cruiser, her weapons targeting the alien ship's engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Around her, other human ships were doing the same, each one engaging the enemy with a level of coordination that seemed impossible. The Velkari had expected human resistance to be desperate and disorganized. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that moved like a single organism, each ship knowing exactly where every other ship would be at any given moment. From his command ship, Admiral Insu coordinated the attack with calm efficiency. His fleet had been preparing for this moment for months, running simulations and drills until every captain knew their role perfectly. The Velkari thought they were facing a hastily assembled defense force. They were actually fighting one of the most carefully planned military operations in human history. "Focus fire on their command ships," Insu ordered. "Take out their ability to coordinate, then work on the smaller vessels." The human fleet moved with deadly purpose. Groups of 3 or 4 ships would concentrate their fire on a single Velkari vessel, overwhelming its shields and crippling it before moving on to the next target. There was no wasted motion, no unnecessary risks taken. But what truly terrified the Velkari was not the tactical skill of the human fleet, it was their attitude. Human ships that took heavy damage didn't retreat or call for help. They pressed their attacks even harder, as if being hurt only made them more determined to fight. Captain Yun-ji watched her ship's armor take a direct hit from a Velkari plasma cannon. The bridge shook, and sparks flew from damaged control panels. But instead of falling back, she ordered her helmsman to close the distance with their attacker. "Ram them if we have to," she told her crew. "That ship fired on human civilians. It doesn't get to leave this system." Her destroyer's steadfast purpose absorbed another hit, and another. But her crew kept fighting, kept pushing forward. When her main engines failed, they used maneuvering thrusters. When her primary weapons went offline, they switched to backup systems. The Velkari captain facing her began to retreat, unable to understand why the human ship wouldn't break off the attack. His own crew was well-trained and experienced, but they had never faced an enemy that seemed to view death as preferable to defeat. Throughout the system, similar scenes were playing out. Human ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting. Human crews that should have surrendered kept manning their weapons. The Velkari had overwhelming individual firepower, but they found themselves psychologically unprepared for an enemy that simply would not give up. Admiral Rathgul tried to coordinate his forces, but the human attacks were coming from too many directions at once. Every time he managed to organize a counterattack, human reinforcements would appear from another hiding place, forcing his ships to defend themselves instead of going on the offensive. "Where are they all coming from?" he demanded. His communications officer looked up from her station, her face grim. "Sir, I'm intercepting human communications. Every civilian ship, every cargo hauler, every mining platform we've detected in the past 3 months was actually a military vessel. They've been watching us the entire time." The full scope of the trap began to dawn on Rathgul. The humans hadn't just prepared defenses for New Busan. They had turned the entire system into a killing ground, using their own territory as bait to lure the Velkari fleet into the perfect ambush. Supreme Commander Thexmore realized that his easy conquest had become a fight for survival. The primitive humans he had dismissed with contempt were systematically destroying his fleet with a combination of superior tactics and absolute determination. For the first time in his military career, Thexmore began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had warned them. They had said their warships were an unyielding force. He had assumed it was empty boasting. Now, as he watched human ships continue their attacks, despite taking damage that should have crippled them, he began to understand that the humans had not been boasting at all. They had been stating a simple fact. The awakening was complete. The galaxy was about to learn what human warships could really do. The Battle of New Busan entered its second hour, and the Velkari fleet was learning that fighting humans was unlike any warfare they had ever experienced. These weren't just ships engaging in combat. They were facing an enemy that seemed to operate by completely different rules. Commander Jae-hwan stood on the bridge of his destroyer Storm's End, watching as his ship took hit after hit from a Valkyrie heavy cruiser. His hull armor was gone, his shields had failed 20 minutes ago, and half his weapons were offline. By any reasonable military standard, he should have withdrawn or surrendered. Instead, he ordered his engineer to overload the main engines. "Sir?" his helmsman asked, uncertain if he had heard correctly. "You heard me," Jae-hwan said calmly. "Full emergency power to the engines. All remaining power from weapons, life support, everything. I want maximum velocity toward that cruiser." His crew understood immediately. They had all volunteered for this mission knowing what might be asked of them. The Storm's End began to accelerate directly toward the Valkyrie ship, her engines burning so hot they began to damage the ship's own hull. On the Valkyrie cruiser, Captain Velthak watched the human destroyer's suicidal charge with growing alarm. "They're not turning away," he reported to his bridge crew. "They're going to ram us." "Impossible," his tactical officer replied. "No military force would waste a ship and crew in such a pointless gesture." But the human ship kept coming. As the Storm's End closed the distance, Commander Jae-hwan opened a general communication channel so both fleets could hear his final words. "For the children of New Busan," he said simply. "For every world that will never see the darkness we have seen." The Storm's End struck the Valkyrie cruiser at full speed, her overloaded engines detonating on impact. The explosion tore through both ships, but it created a gap in the Valkyrie formation that Captain Yoonji immediately exploited. Her ship, Steadfast Purpose, already damaged from earlier fighting, led a group of human destroyers through the opening. They struck at the heart of the Valkyrie battle group, their concentrated fire crippling 2 more enemy ships before the aliens could react. Captain Yoonji had studied the tactical data carefully. The Valkyrie fought like most galactic species. They tried to minimize losses, preserve their ships, and achieve victory through superior firepower and tactics. But humans had learned a different kind of warfare during their darker days. "Target their command ship," she ordered her weapons officer. "All guns, continuous fire. Don't stop shooting until we're dead, or they are." Her ship absorbed punishment that would have destroyed most vessels, but her crew kept fighting. When the main weapons failed, they switched to secondary batteries. When those failed, they used point defense guns. When everything else was gone, they prepared to ram the enemy just as Commander Jae-hwan had done. Admiral Rathgul watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to follow the accepted rules of warfare. Human ships that were clearly defeated kept fighting. Human crews that should have evacuated stayed at their posts. Human captains who could have withdrawn chose instead to die fighting. "This is madness," he declared. "No military force operates this way. Where is their self-preservation instinct?" His communications officer looked up from her station, her face pale. "Sir, I've been monitoring human transmissions. They're not treating this as a normal battle. They keep referring to their ships as monuments to the dead." Supreme Commander Thexmore received the report with growing unease. He had studied the warfare patterns of dozens of species, but he had never encountered anything like this. The humans were fighting as if they had already accepted death, as if their ships and crews were already considered lost. Captain Seung-ho proved this point when his cruiser Last Stand found itself surrounded by 4 Valkyrie destroyers. His ship was outnumbered and outgunned. His shields were down, and his engines were failing. Any reasonable commander would have surrendered. Instead, Seung-ho ordered his crew to abandon ship while he remained at the controls. "Sir, we can't leave you," his first officer protested. "Yes, you can," Seung-ho replied firmly. "Get to the escape pods. That's an order. Someone needs to survive to tell the story of what we did here. As his crew reluctantly evacuated, Sung-Ho set a collision course for the largest Velkari ship. He manually overrode all safety systems and pushed his damaged reactor beyond its limits. The last stand became a guided missile with a human at the controls. The Velkari ships tried to destroy the cruiser before it could reach them, but Sung-Ho used every trick he had learned in 20 years of military service. He varied his course, used debris for cover, and kept coming no matter how much damage his ship took. When the last stand finally struck the Velkari destroyer, the explosion was visible from across the system. Captain Sung-Ho died instantly, but he took 300 alien crew members with him and cleared the way for another human attack group. Admiral In-Soo watched these sacrifices from his command ship with a mixture of pride and sadness. He had known this day might come when humanity would have to demonstrate why their warships were called an unyielding force. But knowing it and watching it happen were very different things. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Honor the fallen by completing the mission. No Velkari ship leaves this system." The human fleet pressed their attack with even greater intensity. They had learned that their enemy could be hurt, could be frightened, could be beaten. The Velkari were discovering that superior numbers and firepower meant nothing against an enemy that valued victory more than survival. Captain Chang Min led a group of human frigates against a Velkari battle group, his ship Eternal Vigil at the front of the formation. His vessel had taken so much damage that it was barely holding together, but he refused to fall back. "Maintain formation," he ordered his squadron. "We break their line here or we die trying." His ships charged into the enemy formation like ancient cavalry, their weapons blazing. The Velkari tried to focus their fire and destroy the attackers, but the humans spread out and attacked from multiple angles simultaneously. Chang Min's ship absorbed hit after hit, its armor plating torn away, its hull breached in dozens of places. But he kept fighting, kept pushing forward, kept giving orders even as his bridge filled with smoke and sparks. When his main weapons failed, he used missiles. When those ran out, he used point defense guns. When everything else was gone, he prepared to ram the enemy flagship just as his comrades had done. The Velkari captain facing him finally broke. "This is insane," he transmitted on an open channel. "You're all going to die. Why won't you surrender?" Chang Min's response was heard by both fleets. "Because our ships carry the names of the dead. Because we promised them that their sacrifice would mean something. Because some things are more important than living." His ship struck the Velkari flagship moments later, and both vessels vanished in a ball of fire. By the end of the 4th hour, Admiral Rathgul realized that his fleet was doomed. They had started with 200 ships against what they thought were 12. Now they faced 500 human vessels, and their own numbers had been cut in half. Worse, the humans showed no sign of slowing down. Every ship they lost seemed to make the survivors fight harder. Every sacrifice seemed to inspire greater determination in the rest of the fleet. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "recommend immediate withdrawal. We cannot win this battle." 4. The first time in his career, Admiral Rathgul agreed. But as he prepared to give the retreat order, he wondered if the humans would even allow them to leave. He was about to find out that human mercy was just as terrible as human wrath. News of the Battle of New Busan spread across the galaxy faster than the warships that were fighting it. Emergency communication channels carried live transmissions from the battlefield to every major government and military headquarters in known space. On the neutral station where the Galactic Council met, Ambassador Yeltran of the Corvani watched the battle reports with growing alarm. His large eyes were fixed on the tactical displays that showed the impossible. A human fleet was systematically destroying a Velkari armada twice their size. "This cannot be accurate," declared Council Leader Quindar, his jellyfish-like body pulsing with agitated colors. "The reports claim human ships are continuing to fight after taking damage that should have destroyed them." Security Chief Minho stepped forward from the human observation post. His presence in the council chamber had been tolerated only because the humans were technically still under consideration for membership. Now his calm demeanor stood in sharp contrast to the chaos around him. "The reports are accurate," Minho said simply. "Our ships are performing exactly as designed." "Designed to be destroyed?" asked a delegate from the reptilian Zephyri Collective. "Designed to be unyielding," Minho replied. "Every human warship is built with the understanding that the crew's survival is secondary to the mission's completion." Communications Officer Hai Wan activated her translation device and began broadcasting human battle communications to the assembled delegates. The chamber fell silent as alien voices began speaking the final words of human crews. "Storm's end to all ships, for the children who will never see war. Last stand, going in. Remember us to Earth. Eternal vigil to Fleet Command. The line holds here." Each transmission ended with the signature of a ship's destruction, followed immediately by other human vessels pressing their attacks with even greater determination. Yeltran had spent years studying human history, but even he was unprepared for what he was witnessing. "They're not just fighting," he said quietly. "They're conducting a religious ceremony." "What do you mean?" Quindar asked. The Corvani ambassador pulled up his research files, displaying human historical data for the council to see. "Look at their ship names: Iron Resolve, Steadfast Purpose, Eternal Vigil. These aren't military designations, they're promises. Each ship represents a vow that humanity has made." Security Chief Minho nodded grimly. "Every human warship carries the names of the dead. Not just military casualties, but every human life lost to violence, to war, to those who would take what others have built. When a crew serves aboard one of these ships, they're not just defending territory, they're defending the memory of everyone who came before them." The delegates watched in stunned silence as another human ship, a destroyer called Unbroken Faith, charged into a formation of Velkari cruisers. The ship took devastating damage but continued fighting until it was nothing more than drifting wreckage. Even then, its automated systems continued firing until all power was lost. "This is beyond military tactics," whispered a delegate from the gas giant dwellers of Proxima Nebula. "This is something else entirely." He-Wan activated another communication feed, this one from Admiral Insu's command ship. His calm voice carried across the chamber as he coordinated the battle. "All ships, maintain formation. Remember why we're here. Remember what happened to Earth. Remember the promise we made to the children of tomorrow." "What happened to Earth?" Yeltran asked urgently. "What is he referring to?" Minho's face grew dark. "Earth was our homeworld. It was also the first human colony to be destroyed by an alien power that thought we were too weak to fight back." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Several delegates began accessing their historical databases, searching for records of Earth's destruction. "When was this?" Quindar demanded. 300 years ago, Minho replied. A species called the Devourers found our homeworld while we were still learning to travel between stars. They demanded our surrender. We tried to negotiate. They responded by cracking our planet's crust and consuming everything on the surface. The alien delegates found the records. Sparse reports from long-range sensors, witness accounts from neighboring systems, fragmentary communications from the dying world. 40 billion humans died in 6 hours. Minho continued. The entire population of our birth world gone. We were scattered across a dozen colonies, maybe 2 billion survivors total. Most species would have given up. Most would have hidden and hoped the Devourers would never find them again. But you didn't, Yeltran said, understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. No, Minho confirmed. We made a different choice. We decided that what happened to Earth would never happen to another world while humans still drew breath. We built a fleet. We hunted down every last Devourer ship. And when we were done, we made a promise to the dead that their sacrifice would protect others. The battle reports from New Busan took on a different meaning now. The human ships weren't just military vessels. They were mobile monuments to the greatest tragedy in human history. Each crew member served not just their government, but the memory of 40 billion dead. Your warships, Quindar said slowly, they're not just defending your colony. They're defending the promise you made to your extinct homeworld. Every human warship is named for some aspect of our determination, Haya-One explained. Iron resolve represents our refusal to give up. Steadfast purpose represents our commitment to our mission. Eternal vigil represents our promise to never be caught defenseless again. As if to prove her point, the tactical displays showed a human cruiser called Unforgotten Sacrifice ramming a Velkari battleship. The explosion took both vessels, but the human captain's final transmission echoed through the chamber. For those who cannot speak for themselves, the alien delegates began to understand why the human fleet was so effective. They weren't fighting for territory or resources or political advantage. They were fighting for the dead. They were fighting to prevent another Earth. This changes everything, said a delegate from the crystal-based entities of the Tau Ceti system. If this is how humans fight when defending their own worlds, what would they do if they were defending ours? Yeltran pulled up more human historical data. According to my research, humans have a concept called extended family. They apply the same protective instincts to their allies that they show to their own species. You mean if we accepted them into the Galactic Council, Quindar said slowly, they would fight this way to defend any member world that was threatened? That was their offer, Minho confirmed. Protection for all council members. A guarantee that no world under human protection would suffer the fate of Earth. The chamber was silent for long moments as the delegates absorbed this revelation. On the tactical displays, the Battle of New Busan was entering its final phase. The Velkari fleet was in full retreat, but the human ships were not letting them go easily. Supreme Commander Thexmore is requesting terms for surrender, reported the Council's communications staff. Will the humans accept? Asked Quindar. Minho checked his own communication device. Admiral Insu is offering standard terms. Surrender unconditionally, submit to inspection for war crimes, and accept human oversight of Velkari military operations for the next 50 years. And if they refuse? Minho's expression was grim. Then no Velkari ship leaves that system. Ever. For the first time, the Galactic Council began to understand what the human ambassador had meant when he warned them that human warships were an unyielding force. They weren't unyielding because of superior technology or numbers. They were unyielding because they carried the weight of human grief, human determination, and human promise. They were unyielding because they fought not just for the living, but for the dead. The 6th hour of the Battle of New Busan marked the beginning of the end for the Valkyrie fleet. What had started as a confident assault on a primitive human colony had become a disaster that would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. Admiral Rathgul stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his tactical display with the hollow stare of a commander who had seen his carefully planned operation collapse into chaos. Of the 200 ships he had brought into the system, fewer than 80 remained combat effective. The rest were either destroyed, crippled, or limping away from the battle with critical damage. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "Admiral Insu is offering surrender terms." The message appeared on the main screen in both Valkyrie and standard galactic text. The terms were simple and harsh: immediate unconditional surrender, submission to war crimes tribunals, and 50 years of human oversight of all Valkyrie military operations. "Unacceptable," Rathgul declared. "We are the Valkyrie Empire. We do not surrender to inferior species." Supreme Commander Thexmore's image appeared on the communication screen from his own flagship, the proud warrior who had laughed at Human A. Warnings now looked haggard and desperate. "Admiral, recommend we accept the terms," Thexmore said. "We cannot win this battle. Further resistance will only lead to unnecessary casualties." "No," Rathgul replied firmly. "We fight until the end. Better to die as warriors than live as subjects." What Rathgul didn't understand was that the humans had been hoping he would make exactly that choice. Captain Chang Min commanded the battlecruiser Eternal Vigil, one of the few human ships that had survived the intense fighting relatively intact. His vessel bore scars from dozens of impacts, its hull armor blackened and cracked, but its weapon systems remained fully operational. "All ships, this is Chang Min," he broadcast to the human fleet. "The enemy has refused surrender. Continue the attack. No Valkyrie ship leaves this system." His ship led a formation of 12 human destroyers and cruisers toward the remaining Valkyrie battle group. The alien ships tried to maintain formation, but their coordination was breaking down under the relentless human assault. The humans had learned something important during the battle. Valkyrie ships were individually powerful, but their crews weren't. Prepared for the kind of sustained, desperate fighting that human military doctrine demanded. When faced with an enemy that refused to retreat or surrender, the aliens began making mistakes. Captain Su Jin's destroyer Iron Resolve had been damaged early in the battle, but her crew had worked miracles keeping the ship operational. Half her weapons were offline, her shields were gone, and her hull was breached in 6 places, but she was still fighting. "Engineering, how much longer can we maintain weapons power?" she asked. Chief Engineer Yu Jin's voice crackled through the intercom from the damaged engine room. "Captain, I can give you maybe 20 more minutes before the reactor goes critical. After that..." She left the sentence unfinished. "Understood," Su Jin replied. "Make those 20 minutes count." Her ship charged into the heart of the Valkyrie formation, targeting a heavy cruiser that was trying to coordinate the alien defense. The Iron Resolve absorbed punishment that should have destroyed her, but Yujin somehow kept the engines running and the weapons firing. When the reactor finally began to overload, Yujin made a choice that exemplified everything the galaxy was: learning about human military culture. Instead of shutting down the reactor to save the ship, she manually overrode the safety systems to give the weapons just one more shot. The Iron Resolve's final weapons discharge crippled the Valkyrie cruiser's engines, leaving it dead in space. Moments later, Yujin's sabotaged reactor detonated, taking both ships in a brilliant flash that was visible across the system. Admiral Insu watched the destruction from his command ship with grim satisfaction. Each human sacrifice was accomplishing something, weakening the enemy, disrupting their formations, proving to the galaxy that human warnings were not empty threats. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Begin final assault pattern. Target the enemy command vessels first." The remaining human fleet moved like a pack of wolves closing in on wounded prey. They had taken heavy losses, nearly 40 ships destroyed or crippled, but they had achieved their objective. The Velkari fleet was broken, scattered, and demoralized. Captain Yunji led the final attack on Admiral Rathgul's flagship. Her destroyer Steadfast Purpose was barely holding together, but she pressed the attack with single-minded determination. "All ships, concentrate fire on the flagship," she ordered. "End this battle here and now." 6 human destroyers and cruisers focused their combined firepower on the massive Velkari dreadnought. The alien ship's shields flared and failed under the concentrated assault. Her armor began to crack and burn. Admiral Rathgul realized that his ship was doomed, but his pride would not allow him to surrender. "All crew to battle stations. We die as warriors." The Velkari flagship fought back with desperate fury, her massive guns striking human ships with devastating effect. But for every hit she scored, the humans returned 10. Their ships pressed the attack even as they took damage that should have forced them to retreat. Captain Yunji's ship took a direct hit that destroyed her bridge and killed half her crew. But the surviving crew members continued the attack from auxiliary control. When the ship's main guns failed, they used point defense weapons. When those failed, they prepared to ram the enemy. "For Earth," Yunji transmitted as her ship made its final charge. "For all the worlds that will never burn." The Steadfast Purpose struck the Velkari flagship's engine section, her overloaded reactor detonating in a chain reaction that tore through both vessels. Admiral Rathgul died in the explosion, his last sight being the faces of human crew members who had chosen death over defeat. Supreme Commander Thex Moore watched his fleet's destruction from his own flagship, the last major Velkari vessel still operational. Around him, the debris of 200 ships drifted in space, evidence of the most devastating military defeat in Velkari history. "Sir," his tactical officer reported quietly, "Admiral Insu is signaling us directly." The human admiral's face appeared on the screen, his expression calm despite the carnage surrounding him. "Supreme Commander, you are the last major ship remaining. I offer you the same terms I offered Admiral Rathgul. Surrender now or join him in death." Thex Moore looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were warriors, but they were also thinking beings who understood that courage and stupidity were not the same thing. Thex Moore began, his voice cracking. "I accept your terms, Admiral Insu. The Velkari fleet surrenders." "Acknowledged," Insu replied. "Shut down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any hostile action will result in the immediate destruction of your vessel." As the remaining Velkari ships surrendered one by one, Admiral Insu surveyed the battlefield. The Battle of New Busan was over. Of 200 Velkari ships, fewer than 20 survived in any condition to surrender. The human fleet had lost 40 vessels, but they had achieved complete victory. More importantly, they had sent a message to the galaxy that would not be forgotten. Human warnings were not threats or boasts. They were promises, and human warships were indeed an unyielding force. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant for the future of interstellar politics. The news of the Velkari fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of the battle's end, every major government, military headquarters, and news organization in known space had received detailed reports of what had happened at New Busan. In the Military Analysis Center of the Nexari Federation, Strategic Commander Velthon stared at the battle recordings with the expression of someone whose entire understanding of warfare had just been shattered. His floating jellyfish-like form pulsed with agitated colors as he reviewed the tactical data for the third time. "This cannot be correct," he said to his staff. "The reports claim that human ships continued fighting after taking damage that should have disabled them completely." His chief analyst, a smaller Nexari named Quirin, activated a holographic display showing the final moments of the human destroyer Iron Resolve. "Sir, watch this carefully. The ship has lost shields, taken multiple hull breaches, and is venting atmosphere. Any reasonable crew would have abandoned ship." The recording showed the human vessel charging directly into a Valkyrie cruiser, its engines overloaded to the point of destruction. "Instead," Quirin continued, "they used their ship as a guided missile. The crew died to ensure their target was destroyed." "Madness," Velthon declared. "No military force can sustain such losses and remain effective." "Sir," another analyst spoke up, "that's what makes this so troubling. The humans didn't just sustain those losses, they used them as tactical advantages. Every ship they sacrificed accomplished something important. They turned their casualties into weapons." Velthon absorbed this information with growing unease. The Nexari Federation had been considering joining the Valkyrie in their expansion plans. Now those plans seemed like suicide. On the other side of the galaxy, the crystalline entities of the Tau Ceti Collective were conducting their own analysis. Their silicon-based forms processed information differently than organic species, allowing them to examine the battle data with mathematical precision. Entity Prime 7 generated a tactical assessment that sent shock waves through the Collective's governing council. Probability of Valkyrie victory, initially 94.7%. Probability of total Valkyrie defeat, 0.0003%. Actual outcome, total Valkyrie defeat with 90% casualties. "Explain the variance," requested Entity Prime 1. "Human military doctrine operates outside standard galactic parameters," Prime 7 replied. "Standard analysis assumes self-preservation as primary motivation. Humans prioritize mission completion over survival by margins of 847% above galactic norms." The Collective's entire understanding of military strategy was based on mathematical models that assumed rational self-interest. The humans had just proven that those models were fundamentally flawed when applied to their species. Back at the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Hyunwoo walked slowly down the corridor toward the main council chamber. 3 months earlier, he had been escorted from this same hallway amid laughter and contempt. Now the alien guards and staff members he passed watched him with expressions ranging from fear to respect. Behind him walked Fleet Admiral Kyung-hee, her dress uniform bearing the insignia of the Human Defense Force. Her presence was a message in itself. The humans were no longer sending diplomats alone. They were sending warriors. The council chamber had been reconfigured since Hyunwoo's last visit. Instead of the scattered platforms and casual seating arrangements, the alien delegates now sat in formal rows facing a central podium. The atmosphere was tense, expectant, and very different from the dismissive mood of 3 months ago. Council leader Quindar's jellyfish-like form pulsed with nervous energy as he called the session to order. The human delegation has requested to address this council regarding recent events in the new Busan system. Hyun-woo stepped to the podium with the same calm dignity he had shown during his first appearance. But now, every alien in the chamber hung on his words. "Honored delegates," he began. "3 months ago, I stood in this chamber and offered you humanity's friendship. I warned you that our warships were an unyielding force. Many of you found this amusing." The chamber was completely silent. No one was laughing now. "I want to be clear about something," Hyun-woo continued. "What happened at New Busan was not a demonstration of our military power. It was not a show of force designed to intimidate you. It was simply the natural consequence of ignoring a human warning." Fleet Admiral Kyung-hee stepped forward, her bearing that of a soldier who had seen too much war. The Velkari fleet attacked a human colony without provocation, without warning, and without mercy. They fired on civilian targets and refused our offer of surrender. The result was inevitable. Supreme Commander Thexmore rose from his designated prisoner's platform. The once proud warrior looked broken, his ornate armor replaced by simple prison clothing. "Honored Council," he said, his voice barely audible. "I wish to address this body." Quindar hesitated, then nodded. "You may speak." Thexmore's massive frame seemed somehow diminished as he faced the assembly. "I came to this council 3 months, ego filled with pride and contempt for the human species. I believed them weak because they spoke of peace. I believed them primitive because they were new to the stars." He paused, struggling with words. "I was wrong, catastrophically wrong. The humans are not weak. They are the strongest military force I have ever encountered. They are not primitive. They are more advanced than any of us imagined. But, most importantly, they are not our enemies unless we choose to make them so." The alien delegates listened with rapt attention as the former Supreme Commander continued. "Their ships fought with a determination I have never seen. Their crews died with a purpose I could not understand. They turned every loss into a victory, every sacrifice into a weapon. When I finally surrendered, it was not to a superior force, it was to a superior philosophy." Ambassador Yeltran of the Corvani stood to speak. "Commander Thexmore, what do you mean by superior philosophy?" "They fight for something greater than themselves," Thexmore replied. "Every human ship carries the names of their dead. Every crew member serves not just their government, but the memory of those who came before. They do not seek conquest or glory. They seek to ensure that no other world suffers as their homeworld suffered." Defense Minister Na-eun stepped forward from the human delegation. "We did not ask for this war," she said firmly. "We offered friendship. We offered protection. We offered partnership. The Velkari chose violence instead." She activated a holographic display showing images from the battle. "These recordings will be distributed to every government in the galaxy. Let them serve as a reminder of what happens when someone mistakes human offers of peace for weakness." The images showed human ships fighting to the death, crews sacrificing themselves to protect others, vessels that should have retreated instead pressing their attacks until they were destroyed. But they also showed something else: the systematic, methodical destruction of an enemy force that had threatened innocent civilians. "Our warships are an unyielding force," Hyun-woo said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "This was not a boast or a threat, it was an explanation. We told you this because we wanted you to understand what you would face if you chose to be our enemies." He paused, looking around at the alien faces watching him. But we also wanted you to understand what you would gain if you chose to be our friends. Human protection is absolute. Human loyalty is permanent. Human promises are kept no matter the cost. Council Leader Quindar found his voice. And if this council were to reconsider your application for membership, then you would gain allies who will never abandon you, Fleet Admiral Kyung-hee replied. The same determination that destroyed the Velkari fleet would be turned to protecting every world under council protection. The chamber erupted in urgent whispers as delegates conferred with their governments. The political landscape of the galaxy had changed forever in the space of 6 hours. The message was clear. Human warships were indeed an unyielding force. The only question now was whether the galaxy would benefit from that force or fear it. 6 months after the Battle of New Busan, the galaxy looked very different than it had before. The Galactic Council chambers, once filled with the casual arrogance of species who had never faced a real challenge, now buzzed with nervous energy and careful diplomacy. Ambassador Hyun-woo stood at the podium where he had once been dismissed with laughter. Today, he was addressing the Council as humanity's first official representative to the galactic government. The vote for human membership had been unanimous, the first time in Council history that every species had agreed on anything. Honored. Colleagues, he began, using the new title that reflected humanity's equal status. Today marks the beginning of a new era in galactic relations. The Human Galactic Defense Accord represents more than just a military alliance. It represents a promise that no world will stand alone against those who would destroy it. In the front row of the council chamber, Admiral Ji-ho sat in the dress uniform of the newly formed Galactic Defense Force. His promotion from exploration captain to fleet admiral had come with the responsibility of integrating human military doctrine with the defense needs of dozens of different species. The Velkari delegation, now led by the humbled Supreme Commander Thexmor, sat in a section reserved for probationary members. The once mighty empire had spent the past 6 months rebuilding their government and military under human oversight. The process had been difficult, but necessary. Thexmor rose when recognized by the council leader. His appearance had changed dramatically since his capture at New Busan. Gone was the arrogant warrior who had dismissed human warnings. In his place stood a leader who had learned the hard way that strength came from more than just superior firepower. "Honored Council," Thexmor said, his voice carrying new humility. "The Velkari Empire formally requests to sign the Human Galactic Defense Accord. We have spent these months learning what it truly means to serve something greater than ourselves." He paused, looking directly at Admiral Ji-ho. "The humans could have destroyed us completely. They could have occupied our worlds and enslaved our people. Instead, they offered us redemption. They showed us that true strength comes from protecting the innocent, not conquering the weak." Council Leader Quindar's form pulsed with approving colors. The Nexari had become one of humanity's strongest supporters after studying the battle records from New Busan. The Council recognizes the Velkari request. Admiral Ji-ho, do the humans accept the Velkari Empire as a member of the Defense Accord? Ji-ho stood, his face grave. The Human Defense Force has reviewed the Velkari military reforms. Their fleet has been restructured according to our defensive doctrines. Their crews have been retrained to prioritize protection of civilians over conquest of territory. We accept their membership, but with conditions. The conditions were read aloud by Defense Minister Na Yoon. Velkari military operations would remain under human oversight for another 4 years. Their ship designs would be modified to match human defensive specifications. Most importantly, every Velkari vessel would carry a human observer to ensure compliance with the new military ethics. Ambassador Yeltron of the Corvani spoke next. His peaceful species had become humanity's closest allies, their natural pacifism, balanced by human willingness to fight when necessary. The Corvani Collective wishes to announce the completion of our joint research station with humanity, he said. Located in the Kepler 442 system, the facility will develop new technologies for planetary defense and disaster relief. We call it the Earth Memorial Station in honor of humanity's lost homeworld. The gesture brought tears to many human eyes. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand the tragedy that had shaped human military culture. Earth Memorial Station would serve as a reminder of what happened when peaceful species had no one to protect them. Strategic Commander Velthon of the Nexari Federation activated a holographic display showing the new galactic defense grid. Human. Military advisors have helped us redesign our defensive strategy, he announced. Instead of each species defending only their own territory, we now have overlapping protection zones that ensure no world stands alone. The display showed a web of patrol routes and defensive positions that covered the entire galaxy. Human ships formed the backbone of the system, but vessels from every member species played important roles. The old pattern of isolated empires protecting only their own interests had been replaced by a unified defense network. Captain Su Jin, now Admiral Su Jin, commanded the flagship of the new Galactic Defense Force. Her ship, the new Iron Resolve, was built using technologies shared by multiple species but designed according to human military principles. It was fast enough to respond to any crisis, tough enough to survive any battle, and crewed by volunteers from across the galaxy. The first joint operations have been successful beyond our expectations, she reported to the Council. 3 pirate raids have been stopped before they could attack civilian targets. 2 slave trading operations have been shut down completely. The new rapid response protocols are working. But the most important change was not visible in ship designs or military strategies. It was a change in attitude that had spread throughout the galaxy like a virus of hope. Navigator Haniul, now a lieutenant commander, stood to address the Council. As the representative of the new Galactic Defense Academy, the institution, established on the human colony world of New Sol, was training the next generation of galactic defenders. We have graduated our first class of joint species officers, she announced proudly. Humans serving alongside Corvani, Nexari working with reformed Velkari, Zephyri learning from Tau Ceti crystalline entities. They are not just military officers, they are the guardians of galactic peace. The young navigator's words carried the weight of a new generation that had grown up with human ideals of protection and sacrifice. These officers would carry the message to every corner of the galaxy. No world stands alone. No species fights without allies. No innocent dies without someone to avenge them. Admiral Insu, now Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense, delivered the final address. His weathered face showed the strain of building a military force from dozens of different species, but his eyes held satisfaction at what had been accomplished. 6 months ago, we were strangers to each other, he said. Today, we are family. The human concept of extended family has become the foundation of our new order. We protect each other not because we must, but because we choose to. He activated a display showing the memorial wall of the new Iron Resolve. Instead of just human names, it now carried the names of fallen defenders from every species. Velkari, warriors who had died protecting a Corvani research station, Nexari tacticians who had sacrificed themselves to save a human colony, Zephyri pilots who had given their lives defending Tau Ceti Crystal Gardens. Our ships no longer carry only the names of the human dead, Insu continued. They carry the names of all who have fallen in defense of the innocent. Every crew member who serves aboard our vessels knows that they fight not just for their own species, but for the promise that no world will suffer as Earth suffered. As the council session ended, Ambassador Hyun Woo reflected on how much had changed since his first appearance in this chamber. The galaxy had learned to heed the warning that human warships were an unyielding force. But more importantly, they had learned that this force could be directed toward protection rather than conquest. Young officers from a dozen species walked the corridors of the council station, their uniforms bearing the insignia of the Galactic Defense Force. They spoke different languages and came from different worlds, but they shared a common purpose: to ensure that no innocent world would ever stand alone against those who would destroy it. The new order was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still disagreements, still species who chose isolation over cooperation. But for the first time in galactic history, there was a force dedicated to protecting the weak rather than exploiting them. Human warships were indeed an unyielding force. But now that force served not just humanity, but every thinking being who chose peace over war, protection over conquest, hope over fear. The galaxy had learned to listen when humans offered warnings. More importantly, they had learned to trust when humans offered promises. Earth was gone, but its children had ensured that no other world would share its fate. The memorial fleets that carried the names of the dead now also carried the hopes of the living. And in the depths of space, human voices continued to whisper the same promise that had echoed through the Battle of New Busan. For all the worlds that will never burn, for all the children who will never know war, for the promise we made to the dead, we are the unyielding force.